What can we talk about oil? I mean, what do we?
That is a conversation that could be never ending. Like I said, everybody's got their opinion on what's best, what works best where for whatever application, what brands are better than what. You've got your favorite.
Yes, I do.
You've got brands you won't put in your lawnmower.
Pennzoil.
I,
Not just because they sponsor Joey Logano, but because I hate Pennzoil.
you know what? I'm not a Pennzoil fan. Sam,
Oh, there is.
Saved by the bell.
you want to bring him in?
Hey, Cam, is that you?
It's me.
How you doing, buddy? It's Dominic.
Doing great, doing great.
Where are you at? Texas, you say?
Yeah, I'm in Dallas.
Oh, well, I really appreciate you calling in, and thanks for letting our listeners listen to you. We got Corey, Joel, and Sam here in the studio, and we thought we'd ask you some questions about some oil and your new venture you got going on.
Yeah, and you guys, all dirt track stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Dirt. Asphalt's for getting to the racetrack.
As Dominic knows, very familiar, so I'll be able to contribute.
Very cool. Cam, first and foremost, my name's Corey. I started this whole Moxie thing. I want to say thanks for calling in the show tonight. We do appreciate you and your expertise, and I for one, am looking forward to learning something from you. We do have some questions that have been sent in. We do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can barely hear you. I can only hear you a little bit.
Okay, so we do have some questions that have
Better.
been sent in from some of our listeners, some of our followers here at Moxie Media Promotions. And first of all, I want to talk about how you got into your industry, kind of give everybody a background on you and what you do, and then your new adventure.
Well, I can tell you that my story is kind of a long one. I'll try to make it as short as possible. You know, my dad was a pretty famous racing broadcaster and did a lot of dirt stuff called Steve Evans that people remember him from Diamond P and from a lot of the different motorsport coverage over the years. So I got drugged into the racing business as a pretty young kid. Ended up racing cars from, I started racing speedway motorcycles when I was about 10 and into road race cars a little bit later. After that, after going to college, I actually got the job between racing Top Fuel with Doug Herbert and did a lot of drag racing because my family was so involved with that I went to work for Popular Hot Rodding magazine alongside, Dominic and a lot of really talented folks. And then in that process, I got to know Tim Kerrigan, who was the president of Redline Oil. And he kind of identified me early as a guy who understood the manufacturing, the technology, the promotional side of it, and was learning the finance side of it. He kind of identified me as a guy who could run that whole business someday. And he said, hey, someday it'll all be yours. And sure enough, it was. So I was the president of that business for quite a while. And even though now I've got another job running a lot of other brands, I've been very honored to kind of be one of the guys who's one of the key kind of, I guess you say, voices in the lubricant industry as it pertains to race cars.
Well, and that's a big-time industry because it's a very important industry when it comes. You're talking race cars. I mean, everybody's got their own opinion about what works best and how to use it where. We had a great conversation a couple weeks ago about that, and that's when Dom says, hey, I know just the guy to talk to. So here you are. I hope you're ready to answer some questions and give us an education tonight.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So your new venture, is it pronounced NiTEO?
Exactly. That means shine in Latin.
Okay. I like it. Very cool. All right. So what you're doing now is what?
I'm the CEO of NiTEO Products. It's a business that's about 5 times bigger than Redline was, and we were even owned by Phillips 66 at that point. So we own brands that you would know like Pyroil, Carbright in the appearance business, all that, the appearance stuff you see in the dealerships behind the scenes. We own the brand Cyclo. We own all of the Valvoline chemicals that aren't lubricants. So if you see like a Max Life fuel cleaner in an AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts, that's us. And we're also a pretty big player in the rest of the detail and car wash businesses with a business called High Tech that makes most of the detail accessories that you'd ever use and a lot of the chemicals, and dyes and spray dyes and things that you'd use on your floor mats. It's a lot of stuff that doesn't seem very sexy, but it's a great business. And we're also in the car wash chemical business. So a lot of times when you drive through the car wash and you wonder what's what are the different chemicals that are sprayed on your car when you go through the wax, when you go through the tire shines. All that stuff comes from NiTEO.
That's crazy. That's not what I was expecting you to say, honestly, but very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so it's I mean, between us girls, it's, well over $100 million business with more than 200 employees. So coming from little old Redline where we were the giant killers, whipping ass on Motul and Valvoline and all those guys, it's pretty funny to be in the position we're in now. To
be one of the giants.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't call us a giant, but we're pretty good at what we do, and we've got a 350,000 square foot facility in just south of Memphis, and we're able to make everything we do ourselves. So it's pretty cool.
Nice,
awesome. So I'm ready to get into some of the technical stuff here and start learning. I mean, I'm ready to turn you loose and kind of start before we start giving you some of these questions to answer, because we've got one question here that was sent to me that it's a foreign language, bud. I have no idea what it means, but we're going to learn.
Go, hit me.
You want to go with the big stuff first?
Yeah, sure. I'm not afraid.
I didn't think you were.
He and I, Dominic and I spent a whole lot of time doing a whole lot of crazy stuff, so he would know that we're not afraid. You can hit me with whatever you want.
Okay, so we'll start with this question here, and again, remember, this was sent in to us. Question is, what benefits do ester-based stocks have over PAOs in an automotive application?
That's actually a really good question. That whoever wrote that is a high-tech Louie. I'm impressed. To that point, so just to make sure everyone knows, there's 5 grades of oil. Nobody's really or grades of base stocks. Nobody's really using a Group 1. A Group 2 would be what you would call petroleum-based oil. A Group 3, which is what most of the oils in the market are, even if they're trying to tell you that they're not. There's a whole lot of competitors you may think are on a plane with a Redline or a Mobil or a Motul, where they're really not. They're using Group 3, and that's basically a synthesized version of a Group 2. So it's very much petroleum-based, but synthesized to give you some of the properties we all know that you see from synthetics, like the stability and such. Some of the Group 3s are pretty good these days. We got to give them a little bit of credit. PAO, like you just mentioned, polyalpha olefin, that's a Group 4. That's where true synthetics actually start, and there's very few of them in the marketplace. The original Mobil one was that way. Pretty hard to tell what's in Mobil these days. I would say almost none of the Royal Purples. There's a little bit of it in some of the AMSOIL products. When you see a product like Redline, that is a cross of PAO and ester base. So an ester base, being a Group 5 base above a PAO, provides an unbelievable ability to basically line up on metal when you get it hot. So the extra barrier that you would hope for from a synthetic lubricant really comes from an ester. That the other thing that an ester brings is that it acts as a natural multigrade property. So if you wish you didn't have to put so much filler in an oil to get it to be thin when you need it to be thin and thicker when you need it to be thicker, esters promote that. You got to remember that most of the base stocks that you see in lubricants are basically just there to carry the additives. But when you start working with PAOs, and especially a mix of PAO and ester, that is really the only time that the base stocks actually provide benefit. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
It does to me, Cam. This is Joel. I'm the resident Asian nerd. I mean, let's just be honest here. So basically what you're saying is that the Group 4s and Group 5 synthetic or Group 4 and Group 5 base stocks provide a better boundary lubrication property than, let's say, a Group 3 or a Group 2 or a Group 1.
It's not just the boundary, but it's also what platform it provides to not make you have to use so much of these thickeners and things to become multi-grade products. So it's kind of a split between the two.
Okay, and then so when you start talking about thickeners and additives, that's if we were looking at a technical data sheet of an oil makeup, that would be depicted in the flashpoint, correct?
Yeah, you can see it a little bit in there, but you'd actually, to be honest, looking at a technical data sheet, there are a few items like high temperature, high shear, and NOAC evaporation that you could pinpoint a few of these things that you would gather up and go, wow, look at where they are on a scale. Wow, that's one hell of an oil. That you can't do it with just one category. You really need quite a few of these categories combined to provide what you would consider to be a quality product.
Okay. And for all the listeners out there, when we start talking a technical data sheet, it's kind of like an SDS sheet, or what some people would refer to as an MSDS sheet, that gives a lot of properties in the testing of these products. It actually provides you with a more, would the term be a better look at what's in the bottle, Cam?
Well, here's the key. You got them mixed up a little bit. So remember, a safety data sheet isn't going to tell you jack all about the oil. But a technical data sheet, which is usually where you'll find what the centistokes, what the viscosity of the oil is at 40C and 100C. And then as you start to do a little research as to what all the other statistics mean, you're not going to see that on an SDS. You're going to see it on a technical data sheet. And where you'll really see where some of these oil companies are full of crap is that they'll leave some of these line items out. When you see a quality company like a Redline would make sure that we're listing NOAC and high temperature, high shear, you'll see one of those missing sometimes on some of these cheaper oils, because the stories that they have to tell with the statistics are not very impressive. So you've got to really dig in if you're going to use a technical data sheet to tell you the lesson. To be honest, especially for your dirt track audience you've got out there, I would much rather they learn the lesson by looking at the rod bearings, by looking at what gears look like. That you can't tell how great oil looks coming out. You got to tell from the parts.
Gotcha. So, for instance, a lot of our motors we're running out here are a GM sealed crate motor, so we actually can't open them up at all. If we open them up, they would be basically illegal at that point. What's a good way to tell?
Okay.
What oil should be in there, or what the oil's doing?
Let me kind of modify that question.
Go ahead.
Cam here. Cam, on a let's say you got a 525 GM crate engine, and one guy
an LS crate engine.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you've got a guy in the same field of dirt late models running a 434 Rodec, open versus crate. What oil would you recommend for each type of engine?
Well, a lot of it depends on clearances, but we work with Jimmy Owens and Billy Moyer and some of the best guys in dirt late model, for example, and Joe Gertie, and a lot of the people have built a lot of the engines behind the scenes on that. What I can tell you is that the kind of baseline based on weather, if you're going to race in really cold climates, and you know that most of your features in your hot laps are going to be in what you would consider to be cold conditions, or you start racing in March and it's a cold snap, you can run as low as a 30 weight in these engines. And if you're going to race in screaming hot, you'd run a better 40, but sometimes some engine builders usually falsely choose to run a 50 weight. But the 40 weight viscosities are typically, when I say a 40 weight, I'm meaning a multi-grade 40, whether you are dumb enough to use a 040 like it's going to be in Wisconsin. Mobile and those guys try to push that on you. Or if you want to use a 1040 or a 540, which are really more thought out because you get a little bit of cold flow when you start the engine, that the viscosity of a 40 weight, that second number is what you want to be looking at. And that gives you the best overall performance in those engines. One thing we did, just to give you a little bit of background, if you know, like the K&N engines that you see in the LS-based motors, the spec motors that you see in the pavement circle track world, we did a lot of testing with those guys because it's a little bit hard to test for power in the dirt world because the things spin the tires so often.
Right.
On the dyno, remember that with these hydraulic roller motors, that basically as you get into the really high RPMs or wherever the fuel injection will let you go, obviously some people are fortunate enough to be able to run carburetors, but what ends up happening when you get anywhere past about 6,500 RPM in an LS motor, that the lifters start going sonic. Basically, you start getting aeration in the oil when you run some of these cheaper brands of oil. I know there's a lot of low-cost Champion and some of these brands, they don't have enough anti-foam characteristics, and you can't just